Shabbat Shalom from Under the Dome. I'm here with Rob and Michael, and my name is Noel. This is the Diaspora of Yashar'el, and of course, you guys all know that we are on Revelation chapter 14 and 15, but not just Revelation. We are reading from the Hebrew document, Hebrew Revelation chapter 14 and 15. By this point, whether you know it or not, we have taken a fork in the road. I don't know if Rob and Michael even know this. We'll have to see. But from where I'm sitting, we have taken the fork in the road. And from this point forward, reading 14, 15, 16, 17, all the way through 21, Revelation takes a completely different course if we come upon the decision that Babylon is Jerusalem or Rome. It doesn't really matter whether you believe in this context, if Revelation already happened and is already fulfilled, as I do, or that it's future tense. If you believe that Babylon is Rome or Jerusalem, it takes on a very different feel from here on out. Now, this will be an interesting week, and I am asking everyone here in attendance tonight to consider taking part in the roundtable afterwards. I usually just speak for myself, but I think this time I can speak for Rob and Michael that we all want this to be a roundtable discussion week after we talk. I think it should be really interesting because there's what we're going to talk about. There could be a lot of different ideas to this. And so just everyone start thinking about your questions, your comments as we go through this. Be sure to take notes and bring them up afterwards. And we're going to open with prayer. Would somebody like to open us in prayer?
I can if no one is willing to volunteer.
Rob, why don't you open us in prayer and then just go straight into the reading?
Father Yahuah, we thank you for this time that we have together to gather together as a family to research and read your words, this special book that was written in Revelation, that we can read it, discuss it amongst each other, and see what the Ruach is saying. Father, may you bless each and every one here, and may we gain some additional wisdom and insights from your words that you put upon our hearts. May you bless all that are here, Michael and Noel, and may your spirit work through us. Father, we give you thanks, glory, and honor, for you are the great I am. Hallelujah. Okay, I will begin to start, and I will be reading chapter 14, and then we'll go into discussing it, and then after we do all of that, then we'll do 15, and Michael will read 15. Okay, so these are the confidential counsels, the Hebrew Revelation, chapter 14. And I saw a lamb standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000. And the name of his Father was written upon them. Then I heard a voice from the heavens like a noise of great waters, and like the sound of great voices. And the voice which I heard was like a sound of a lyre. And there were singing like a new song before the throne and before the four living creatures and the elders. And no one was able to learn this song except these 144,000 whom he bought. And these are those who did not sin with women, and they are like virgins, and go after the Lamb. And they are bought as first fruits of Yahweh and the Lamb. And there is no deceit in their spirit, and they are blameless before the throne of Yahuah. Then I saw a messenger fly in the midst of the heavens, and he had one good news to make known to those who dwell on the earth and to all the peoples and nations. And he said with a great voice, "Fear Yahuah, and do your prayer to him, for the judgment day has come, and do prayer to him who created the heavens and the earth and the seas and the fountains." And after this voice, another messenger came and cried out, "Fallen, fallen has Babel, the great city, for she corrupted all the peoples with the wine of her fornication." And after this, the third messenger came and said with a great voice, if one does his prayer to the carved image and to the animal, and take the sign on his hand or on his forehead, this one will drink the wine of fury of Yahuah, which is in the cup of fury, and he will be punished with fire and brimstone before his set-apart messengers and the Lamb. And the smoke of their punishment will go up from everlasting and unto everlasting. And they will not have rest day or night, those who took the sign and prayed to the carved image. Here is the hope of the set-apart ones. And here are those who do the commandments of Yahuah and believe in Yeshua. And I heard a voice from the heavens saying to me, write, blessed are they who die on account of sanctification of Yahuah from now on. And what the Ruach says is true, that they rest from their works, for their works follow after them. Then I saw a bright cloud, and on it there sat one with the appearance of a man, and on his head was a crown of gold, and in his hand was a sickle. And another messenger came from the house of prayer, and cried with a loud voice to him who sat on the cloud, thrust your sickle and harvest, for the time of the harvest has come. And he who sat on the cloud thrust with his sickle and harvested. And another messenger came to the heavens, and in his hand was a sickle. Then another messenger went out from the altar, and he had control over the fire. And he cried out with a loud voice to him who had the sickle, and said, thrust with your sickle and harvest the grapes of the earth, for its fruits are ripe. So the messenger thrust with his sickle and harvested the grapes of the earth, and cast them into the great winepress of the fury of Yahuah. And the winepress was outside the city, and the blood of the winepress went up to the bridle of horses, a way of 1,600 stretches of field. That ends chapter 14. I will pass it over to Michael.
All right, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. That was a great prayer, Rob. That was awesome. And then I just want to highlight again what Noel said. We were discussing this, privately, and we don't have much collectively. So this will be a great chapters to talk and roundtable, especially the 144,000. A lot of people have their own different interpretations, so we'd love to hear yours. So I'm going to start on verse 2. I'm going to read the Hebrew. It says, then I heard a voice from the heavens, like the noise of great waters, and like the sound of great waters. And the voice which I heard was like the sound of a lyre. And so we're talking about the 144,000. One of the only times in the Old Testament where God or Yahuah numbered his people was for war. So I want to, cross-reference 1 Chronicles 25, and are the 144,000 soldiers as well. So 1 Chronicles 25:1. Moreover, David and the commanders of the army set apart for the service of the sons of Asaph, Heman, and Jeduthun, who were to prophesy with harp and cymbals. So we just read in verse 2 about they had a lyre. The previous, in verse 1, it talks about them being numbered. And I think it's an army as well. And David, Yeshua is the prototype, or David's a prototype of Yeshua. We'll get more into this. It's my opinion that they're priests and they're soldiers. So we'll get to that later. But it says, and they were singing a new song before the throne and before the four living creatures and the elders. And no one was able to learn this song except these 144,000 whom he bought from the earth. So this appears to be the Song of Moses. The Song of Moses is, I was reading about this. It's Scripture's first song because Yah wanted to associate it with his plan of redemption. It was sung after Israel applied the blood of the Passover lamb to their households, passed through the Red Sea, and gathered safely beyond the reach of Pharaoh. This is this the same thing? Was there tribulation did they have to escape Babylon, and they were redeemed or bought from the earth, and they sung the song because they were so grateful. So my two long ones, and then I'll hand it off to Noel. Number 4. I'm going to read both. So they are virgins. These are they which follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. These were redeemed from among men, being the firstfruits unto God and unto the Lamb. And in the Hebrew, and these are they who did not sin with women, and they are like virgins, and go after the Lamb. And they are bought as firstfruits of Yahweh and the Lamb. So I just wanted to point out some differences between the Hebrew and the Greek. In the Greek, it says they were not defiled with women. And in the Hebrew, it says they do not sin with women. And it also says they are like virgins. So where the Greek says they are virgins. And I know you have a lot of theology based on that to where they are virgins. Where in the Hebrew, it says they are like virgins. I'm sure we're definitely going to get into that, but that would change some things if the Hebrew is more correct. That word like. I want to read Exodus 23:19. You shall bring choice the first fruits of your soil to the house of the Lord your God. James 1:18. In the exercise of his will, he gave us birth by the word of truth, so that we would be kind of first fruits among his creatures. Okay, some more on this. I want to talk about that word virgin. So that word there in Revelation 14:4. So Strong's word parthenoia. The way that's used is only used 4 other times in the Bible. So if you take the root word, it's used way more. But that particular way it's used in 14:4 is only used 4 other times, and we're going to go over that. So it's used here. Twice it's used in the wise virgins, and then in Matthew, and then the last one is in Acts 21, and I want to read that one. On the next day we left and came to Caesarea, and we entered the house of Philip the evangelist. And if you've listened to my studies previously, I love Philip. He was my favorite deacon. He says, the house of Philip the evangelist, who was one of the seven, the set apart one, and stayed with him. Now this man had 4 virgin daughters who were prophetesses. That word virgin, same word, used 144,000. So it's pretty interesting, huh? So it's only used 4 times. Wise virgins, this passage, and then Philip's daughters. Okay, so I want to talk about prophets. I can't say this word. Prophets. There are 9 women in the Bible who are called true prophetesses. They are Miriam, Deborah, Huldah in 2 Kings, Isaiah's wife, Anna in Luke 2, and then the 4 daughters of Philip. So did you catch that? So in the New Testament, there's Anna and the 4 virgins, or in the 4 daughters. That would give you 5 virgins. How many are in the Matthew passage? There's 5 wise virgins. I wonder if there's something to that, to where in the New Testament, Anna in Luke 2, and then the 4 daughters of Philip would be considered in the New Testament, and that's what that Matthew passage says. So maybe there's more to that. Okay, so in addition, there's 2 other women who are considered false prophetesses. These are, and I'm going to butcher this, Noadiah and Nehemiah 6:14, and Jezebel, obviously in Revelation. These are false prophetesses. And then finally, and I'll hand it off to Noel here, I'm going to read 5. Read both. And in their mouth was found no guile, for they are without fault before the throne of God. And in the Hebrew, and there is no deceit in their spirit, and they are blameless before the throne of Yahweh. All right, so I'll start with a few cross references. Shocking. So Psalms 32:2. How blessed is a person whose guilt the Lord does not take into account, and in whose spirit there is no deceit. And then, this also, and I'm going to talk more about it, reminds me of Isaiah 53. So Isaiah 53:10. But the Lord desired to crush him, causing him grief. If he renders himself as a guilt offering, he will see his offspring. He will prolong his days, and the good pleasure of the Lord will prosper in his hand. Okay, so Yeshua was a guilt offering, and I want to talk more about that type of offering. So the word for that is a Sham. It means guilt, fault, blame, responsibility for sinful actions. So a guilt offering, possibly this word can apply to the actions for which one is guilty, trespass, offense. A Sham appears to be for guilt, blame, or responsibility for sin. rather than for the sin or transgression itself. This in mind is key to understanding this word. This is particularly important in Isaiah 53, where Yeshua takes our guilt on himself. He does not take the actual sin upon himself, but the guilt for the sins. So Yeshua didn't commit any sins. However, he took upon himself the blame, the guilt, the responsibility for those sins, and he became our sin offering, where the guilt for the sins becomes the offering for the sin. Okay. And First Peter talks about he bore our sins in his body on the cross. 2 Corinthians 5, he who knew no sin was made sin for us, that we might be made the righteousness of God in him. I'm going to split it up here. I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll hand off to Noel for commentary.
So you think they're soldiers, huh? You're going that route. I see how this is. Okay. Well, Michael covered a couple things on the first fruits. I think Michael read from Exodus 23:19 through 20. And just in case he did it, let me just type this in here so you guys can all see this, because I think this is really interesting. Let's see what BibleBot comes up with. And again, so bring the first of the first fruits of your land into the house of your Elohim, of Yahuah your Elohim. Do not, this is, then it throws in there, do not cook a young goat in its mother's milk. Kind of interesting. I think there's something connected to that, by the way, because again, for Exodus, well, I'll get there. But then it says, see, I am sending a messenger before you to guard you in the way and to bring you into the place which I have prepared. Now, let me put this in here. Exodus, this might be the other kid in its mother's milk. No. Oh, that is actually, but it's, anyways, in Exodus 34, it says the same thing. It's talking about Shavuot, and then, or the Festival of Weeks, and then it talks again about the goats with the milk, and that. Well, that's kind of interesting. Now, there's actually, this will be an interesting roundtable, because there's actually quite a few different ideas on the 144,000. Probably everyone knows the Jehovah's Witness view, which is that there are exactly 144,000 that are going to make it, which is a pretty narrow path. Some people will say that it's a symbolic for the number of completeness. I think most of us here probably take a far more literal view. One thing, the last time we did see them in Revelation chapter 7, it was noted at that time that the two tribes that are not included are Dan and Ephraim. Well, I find that really interesting that Ephraim is not included. If it is through Ephraim that we can argue that we're grafted in, why is Ephraim not included in this number? One other view before I talk about that, this is a non-biblical source, but I actually read this last week. It was kind of interesting, and I want to bring this up because I'm actually delving back into the Arthurian mysteries, just to trying to figure out Dark Ages, Millennial Kingdom, Rome, the fall, all that kind of stuff, and where this place is. And I was reading this book called Pearl, and Pearl is a beautiful poem, and very old poem. And the idea is that a father has to bury his 2-year-old daughter. I don't need to go through all this. She dies, and he's able to see his daughter resurrected, living in paradise. And I won't read this passage, but in this book, she claims that she's one of the 144,000. I thought that was kind of interesting. And it seemed like one of the big views in official history during the Middle Ages was that the 144,000 were literally women, and they were brides of Messiah. So, talk about polygyny, right? That it's the parable of the wise and foolish virgins, and the wise virgins ended up becoming the 144,000. Kind of interesting. I don't take that view. Just wanted to throw that out there. One connection I did see that was a little bit interesting, though, comes from 2nd Esdras. So let's see if I can pull this up. Let's pull up 2nd Esdras. Come on, BibleBot, don't let me down. 2nd Esdras, chapter 2, verse 23. What does this say? It's not going to say it. Oh, wow. Okay. Thank you for not showing up to the discussion, BibleBot. So let's see. There it is. I'm going to just go ahead and turn here my Bible so you guys can hear the pages flip. 2nd Esdras chapter 2, verse 23 says this: Whosoever you find or wheresoever you find the dead, take them and bury them, and I will give you the first place in the resurrection. All right, so think about this. Think of this theme of the first fruits in the resurrection. We then read in chapter 2, same chapter, verse 27. Be not weary, for when the day of trouble and heaviness comes, others shall weep and be sorrowful, but you shall be merry and have abundance. The heathen shall envy you, but they shall be able to do nothing against you, says Yahuah. My hand shall cover you, so that your children shall not see Sheol. Be joyful, O mother, with your children, for I will deliver you, says Yahuah. Remember your children that sleep. The context here is Sheol, that sleep in Sheol. For I shall bring them out of the sides of the earth, and shall mercy unto them, for I am merciful, says Yahuah Sabaoth. All right, so the context here is that Yahuah is going to personally empty out Sheol. Now we saw, and also that not only would it be emptied out, that the children of Israel would no longer enter Sheol. The pagans and the goyim might go to Sheol, but the righteous, the set apart, the sons of Israel would be taken to paradise. We saw this in the Gospel of Nicodemus and some other sources where Yahusha personally did this. Now, I think it was interesting that right before that, the command is given that those who bury the dead will be given, the first fruit of the resurrection. So I'm just going to throw out there the possibility that these 144,000, I don't know exactly who the 144,000, I don't know if they are those who I believe were perhaps resurrected in 66-ish AD, or if they were those who arose from Sheol with Yahusha afterwards. But I do think that there is a case to be made that they are the first fruits of the resurrection. So, and they were, specifically chosen, as Michael pointed out, because of, their deeds, their purity, and so on and so forth. I have much more to say on this chapter, but turning it over back to you, Rob.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm in alignment with a lot of that. But I do also take the view. It sounds like Michael mentions the soldiers. I'm taking the view of the priests on this as being the firstborns are his, as we've seen with Aaron and his sons and the tribe of Levi, etc. So I will start. I'll drop a slide in and start with that. And what I'm going to read is regarding the first 5 verses on them. I'm sorry, it's not dropping here. See if I get it to work right. Okay. All right. So what I want to highlight here, I saw a lamb standing on the Mount Zion with 144,000, and the name of his father was written upon them. I color code these so if anyone's following along, they can relate to each colors stands for that particular idea or image, person, whatever may be referencing to that in that color, so you can follow along. So here we see some voices of a lyre, sound like a lyre, and they were singing this new song. And Michael touched on that with the Song of Moses. And what I want to point out is what I circled here, and with the 144,000, whom the Father bought from the earth, and that is key. This purchase transaction that is being mentioned here, because we see this throughout multiple scriptures of this type of transaction happening. And they who did not sin with women, and they are like virgins. And when I'm reading this like virgins, that would be like women are, in the scriptures are always referenced. The maidens always referenced as virgins. So it's usually always referencing to the women in that sense. So that's why I believe it's saying like virgins. So when someone's talking about a virgin, it's talking about a fair maiden, a woman who has not had fornication, etc. So that's where it's defining what it just said in that prior piece of the sentence. Who did not sin with women? So these men are virgins, and and they go after the lamb, and they are bought as firstborn of Yahuah and the lamb. So I'm going to talk about being bought as firstborn. And then I'm also going to talk about the next part where there's no deceit in their spirit and they are blameless. So it's describing this 144,000, and we'll talk about these 2 points on them so we can get a better understanding of who they are. So as I just read, they were bought as firstborn of Yahuah. And I'm going to read from Exodus and Numbers. Exodus 13:13 and Numbers 3:13. Very interesting numbers. Every newborn opening the womb of a donkey you shall barter for sheep, but if you should not barter, you shall ransom it. So this is talking about a donkey. You're ransoming for it if you're not bartering with sheep. And then the second part here, every firstborn of man of your sons you shall ransom. Once again, another financial transaction term. Then in Numbers 3:13, because all the firstborn are mine, says Yahweh. For on the day that I smote all the firstborn in the land of Mitzrayim, I hallowed unto me all the firstborn in Yashar'el, both man and beast. Mine shall they be. I am Yahuah. So here we see that the firstborn, every firstborn of man, of your sons, so it's specifically talking about Israel, he is ransoming. So he is purchasing them for him specifically. And that's where we see this 144,000. That's, to me, that is the literal purchase. Because I'm going to read further about the purchase being paid for. You can pay for this so that you don't give up your firstborn. But I believe there's 144,000 that he will literally purchase. They will be his, and they are set apart. And we're going to read a little bit more about that. So we see here the first fruits, firstborn belong to Yah. And I got more verses tying that in to support it. And then also to touch upon, there's a redemption of the son, and you can redeem that son so that that son is more or less not giving over to the priesthood, but you can keep that son as a Israelite to stay at home, and you pay the 5 shekels of silver, and for him to be at home and work the fields, etc., and be part of the family, etc. So what I'm going to speak to regarding this piece here is I'm going to talk about further is on the purchase. So regarding the purchase with these 144,000, we're going to read about the purchase that Yah speaks about in Micah. So here in Micah chapter 6, 1 through 8, and this is going to be talking about you've been purchased, and your requirement because you've been purchased is obedience. Hear now what Yahuah is saying. Arise, strive with the mountains, and let the hills hear your voice. Hear, O you mountains, the controversy of Yahuah, and you everlasting fountains of the earth. So he's setting this up. Listen up. For Yahuah has a controversy with his people, and he shall reprove Yashar'el, Israel. My people, what have I done to you? And how have I wearied you? Answer me, for I brought you up from the land of Mitzrayim, and I ransomed you. from the house of bondage. And I sent Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam before you. My people, remember, please, what Balak, sovereign of Moab, counseled, and what Bilam, son of Beor, answered him, and Shittim and Gilgal, in order to know the righteousness of Yahuah. And if you don't know about Balak and Bilam, you really need to research that one out and understand what was happening during that time and situation to see why Yah is talking specifically about this, so that you may know righteousness. Okay, so with that, I shall come before Yahuah. Now, this is Micah speaking. I shall come before Yahuah, bow myself before the high Elohim. Shall I come before him with ascending offerings with calves a year old? Is Yahuah pleased with thousands of rams or 10,000 rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my being? So here he is. He's talking, should I do all of these sacrifices? And Yah has declared to you, O man, what is good? And what does Yahuah require of you? He's not talking about sacrifice. He says to do right and to love loving commitment and to walk humbly before your Elohim. So that's what he's requiring us. He purchased us, and the requirement from that purchase, what we do is do right, loving commitments, and walk humbly. So it's being outlined right here in Micah. I mean, it's clear. So I wanted to talk about obedience because we've been purchased. And this ties in with the 144,000 because they have been purchased. And so because they've been purchased, and like I said, I believe literally they've been specifically selected, whether it's throughout time, 144,000 specifically, where like that one is mine and that one is mine, etc., until they all are sealed with his name on them. And then once they're all sealed, then then the damage of the earth can start, because we read that back in chapter 7. Do not damage the earth, sea, or trees until a mark is placed on their foreheads of the 144,000 servants of Yah, and they have the name of his father written on their foreheads. So that I wanted to talk about as far as them being firstborn and then being purchased. Then the second part, talking about there's no deceit in their spirit, and they are blameless. All right, so I know Michael read one of these, Psalms 32:2. Blessed is the man to whom Yahuah imputes no iniquity, and in whose spirit there is no deceit. So this is a definition of the 144,000, whose spirit there is no deceit. Blessed be that man who imputes no iniquity. So that person is imputing no sin. He's walking righteously. So this is defining what that no deceit, that spirit no deceit is. He who practices deceit does not dwell in my house. This is Yah speaking. He who speaks lies does not stand in my presence. Psalms 101:7. So another defining piece, that you will not dwell in his house, and you will not even stand in his presence. Practicing deceit, period. Then Psalm 119:1, Aleph. Blessed are those whose way is blameless, who walk in the Torah of Yahuah. Here's another defining piece of the 144,000. They are blameless. Their way is blameless because they walk in the Torah of Yahuah. And Psalm 106:3. Blessed are they that guard judgment, and he that does righteousness at all times. So we see here the 144,000, they were handpicked, if you will, by Yah to be his for their pure righteousness. They were committed in it. They were not defiled with women. They were, let's just put it this way. They were pure for him and lived for him, and they walked righteously for him. So that's what this 144,000 is that I wanted to define and show. So that way, if we roundtable this, that's my view. I believe that's who they are. I got more on the three angels next. I guess I can. You want me to continue or pass that over from to Michael?
Pass.
Continue, Michael or no?
Yeah, let's round. I mean, I got more.
Okay, then I'll pass it over to you then. Thanks.
All right. So on a little bit of an audible, and I'm gonna because I want to explain my position a little bit more. So I do believe they're warrior priests, like the Levites were for sure, and I'm going to give some examples of both. So the infamous post-tribulation verse that everybody likes to throw at us, Matthew 24:31, and he shall send his angels with a great, which is really messengers, with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. So I just want to highlight here, his messengers have a trumpet, gather the elect. Okay, so I like to use this one, but Jeremiah 31:8 in the LXX, behold, I bring them from the north, and will gather them from the end of the earth to the feast of the Passover. And the people shall beget a great multitude, and they shall return hither. The reason why I wanted to bring that one out is because of the feast of the Passover. It literally says that's when he's gathering it. But it also says the multitude. And I want to show you who I think is gathering the multitude. So Numbers 10:8, the sons of Aaron, the priests, shall blow the trumpets, and these shall be to you as an ordinance forever throughout your generations. When you go in your land against the enemy who oppresses you, then you should sound an alarm with the trumpets, and you will be remembered before the Lord your God, and you will be saved from your enemies. Very similar to Matthew 24:31. The priests or the messengers blow the trumpets, and then they gather the others, the multitude, the elect from their enemies. They are the 144,000. They're the ones who are the warriors, and then also the priests, just like Aaron did in Numbers 10:8 and 9. They're the ones blowing the trumpets, saving the elect, saving the flesh. Time had to be cut short to save the flesh. The 144,000 are the ones doing that. And here's another one, Isaiah 1:26. I love this one. And I will restore thy judges as at the first, and thy counselors as at the beginning. Afterward, thou shalt be called the city of righteousness, the faithful city. He's bringing the judges and the priests first, in my opinion. But they also are warriors. So I just wanted to point that out before I get going here. Okay, so number 6, I just thought it was interesting. So I guess I'll just read it real quick. And I saw an angel fly in the midst of heaven, ever the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth. I won't read the whole thing, but in the Hebrew it says, and I saw a messenger fly in the midst of heavens, and he had one good news to make known. So that's the difference. Everlasting gospel in the Greek, one good news to make known. I'm hoping others will talk more about that, but I just wanted to highlight that. Number 11, it talks about, let's see, and the smoke of their torment ascended up forever and ever. Again, I'm not going to read the whole thing because I just wanted to highlight that part. And then in the Hebrew, and the smoke of their punishment will go up from everlasting and to everlasting. So the difference is torment and punishment. I guess if I would have kept going, the difference would be took the sign and prayed to the carved image. That's in the Hebrew, that's not in the Greek. So I'm asking the question, would this change the eternal torment argument? Because their torment ascended, and the smoke of their punishment will go up. I don't know. Isaiah 34:10, it will not be extinguished night or day. Its smoke will go up forever from generation to generation. It will be desolate. Number 13, I'm going to read both. And I heard a voice from heaven saying unto me, write, blessed are the dead which die in the Lord from henceforth. And I'm going to stop there because that's the difference I want to talk about. And in the Hebrew, and I heard a voice from the heavens saying to me, write, blessed are they who die on account of the sanctification of Yahuah from now on. So the difference is which die in the Lord and who die on account of the sanctification. Yeshua, Jesus, is our priest. I'm going to talk about, I found two good passages that talk about the sanctifying of the priest. So, and Aaron and his sons I will sanctify to serve me, and I will dwell amidst the children of Israel, and I will be to them for a God. You know, we're waiting for that day when we dwell with the Son and the Father. And another one, and you should sanctify him, since the bread of your God he sacrifices. Holy he should be to you, since holy I am, the God who makes you holy. I just thought that was cool, of priests being sanctified. Two left. Number 15, I'm going to read the Hebrew. And another messenger came from the house of prayer and cried with a loud voice to him who sat on the cloud, thrust with your sickle and harvest, for the time of the harvest has come. I'm going to talk about Joel 3, 13. Put in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come, tread the grapes, for the winepress is full. The vats overflow, for their wickedness is great. Just somewhat of a cross-reference. And actually reading this made me think of something I missed when talking about the 144,000. In Joel 2, which is the famous passage of the day of the Lord, it's one of my favorite passages. I'm going to have to read it. Sorry, guys. I'm going to call another audible here. So starts on 15, Joel 2:15. Blow a trumpet in Zion. We just talked about that. Consecrate a fast, proclaim a solemn assembly. Gather the people, sanctify the congregation. We just talked about that. Assemble the elders, gather the children and the nursing infants. Have the groom come out of his room. Who's that? And the bride out of her bridal chamber. Who's that? Now here's where I'm talking about. 17, let the priests, the Lord's ministers, weep between the porch and the altar. And let them say, spare your people, Lord, and do not make your inheritance a disgrace. A bunch of things. That's the wedding. I thought everybody's invited to the wedding. This is he blew the trumpet, could be Yom Teruah. He gathered the people. The groom came out. The bride came out. The priests are there. That's who the 144,000 are. They're the priests. And look what they're doing. They feel remorse for the people. Who are these people? You keep reading on 18. Then the Lord will be zealous for his land and will have compassion for his people. The Lord will answer and say to his people, behold, I'm going to send you new grain, new wine, and oil. And you will be satisfied and full with them. And I will never again make you a disgrace among the nations. And it keeps going. That's, I used to, I don't know what, I used to make the claim that's a pre-trib verse right there. Who are these people not invited to the wedding? That's the multitude. That's the 144,000 having, like mercy on the others and telling the bride or telling the groom, go save your people. You could also make it a post-mill possible verse there as well. But the point I wanted to point there is Joel 2, day of the Lord. Who are these priests? These aren't angels. These are priests. In the wedding, the groom and bride came out. So, all right, one last thing, and I'll hand it off to Noel. Number 20, I will read the Hebrew. And the winepress was outside the city, and the blood of the winepress went up to the bridle of the horses. A way of 1,600 stretches of field. Some cross references, Sirach 39:26. I thought this was cool. The basic necessities of human life are water and fire, and iron and salt, and wheat and flour, and milk and honey, the blood of the grapes, and oil and clothing. And 1 Maccabees 6:34. They made the elephants drunk on the juice of grapes and mulberries to get them ready to fight. And I guess I won't read the last one, it's long. But that's what I have for Revelation 14, off to Noel.
That was a lot of good stuff. I'm actually glad you brought up the smoke of their punishments in verse 11. For those of you who've been around for the last several years, if you've been around that long, I used to be, my segue into Torah was speaking on what we call soul sleep, and that eternal torment is a Greek ideal, not biblical. And one of the verses I like to turn to that speaks on this comes from Genesis chapter 19, verse 28. And the context here is that Abraham has just spoken with the messengers, the angels, the day before. And, he did that whole like bartering, thing, trying to spare Sodom and Gomorrah. And so he's sleeping at night. And the first thing he does when he wakes up, he rushes over to his view of Sodom and Gomorrah. And it says, he looked toward Sodom and Gomorrah and toward all the land of the plain, and he saw, and behold, the smoke of the land which went up like the smoke of a furnace. And I love that description there, because in Hebrew thinking, this idea of the smoke rising from a furnace is the picture of judgment and punishment and finality. Like these people in Sodom and Gomorrah, they were judged. They were, we don't know how long they were tormented as they were burning up. If it was instantaneous for some of them, others maybe a little bit longer, but they did burn up, and the smoke of their torment, or here we could say the smoke of their punishment, rises forever. And one of the ways to think about smoke rising forever, people would say, well, if it's forever, no, that must mean if there's smoke that's burning forever, they must be in this fire forever. Well, not necessarily. Death itself will be no more someday, so can't have that. And we read in Micah that it talks about like at the resurrection of like a calf being leaping out of its stall. I gotta say, the most adorable thing the other day, I'm driving through Georgia, and we're driving past these back roads, and I think there were 4 of them, 4 little calves, like jumping up and down in a circle, and it was like there was probably a butterfly on one of their noses. Like, it was the most adorable thing you could imagine. But the picture is given that we will be like these young calves leaping from the stall over the ashes of Gehenna, like the ashes itself. We will prance on these ashes, that the fire will be no more, and the smoke does rise forever. Once you get to the highest heaven, I'm assuming there's no ceiling there at the top. That's my assumption. We don't really know, but it seems like it's how high does the smoke rise? Probably forever. It just keeps going up and up and up and up and up. Now, before I do talk more about this section right here, before I forget, I want to point out in verse 8, it talks about the great city. I had started talking tonight saying that there's a fork in the road, and indeed there is. I was kind of trying to get Michael and Rob's view, and how they've felt about Babylon here, and just trying to figure this out. I have to admit, I'm undecided myself. I'm not sure how this is going to go. And what we have just seen in chapter 14 is that this is actually a segue. Like it's picking up some scenes we have seen in Revelation 7, but now we're segueing. Even 15 is just a continuation of 14, but it really leads into 16 and 17 and 18, where it gets really heated and intense, and Babel comes down. And so the question that we all have to ask is, it says right here, the great city. I actually took I was passing some notes with Ronit today to see how she reads it in the Hebrew. And she pointed out Jeremiah 22:8. So let's see what this says in BibleBot here. And it says, and many nations shall pass by this city. The context of this city here is Jerusalem, the judgment of Jerusalem. And they shall say to one another, what has Yahuah done so to this great city? So there's another reference there to the great city, and it's Jerusalem. However, we also see in Jonah chapter 1, 3, and 4 that the great city is a reference to Nineveh. So again, which is it? Well, this is something we're going to have to kind of sit here the next couple weeks and try to figure out, because again, that changes a lot of the outcome of this book and how we see it on a timeline perspective. So what I specifically want to talk about here in chapter 14, I can't let this slide by. You guys all know my theme verse is Revelation 14:12. If anybody comes, it wants to teach here, if anyone wants to be an administrator, if anyone wants to write articles, this is the one thing I ask everybody to sign off on. And it says, in the Greek, here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of Elohim and the faith of Yahusha. Now, it actually says this 3 different times in Revelation, and we find out that those who keep the commandments or keep the Father's commands and the testimony of Yahusha are those who Satan is at war with. He's not at war with anybody else. He's at war with those who keep the commands and the testimony. And also, that is the requirement of those who are written in the book of life. If you want to be written in the book of life, you got to keep the commands and the testimony of Yahusha. Now, notice it doesn't say that he opens up the book of faith, the book of those who believed and had faith. And also notice to here that it is connected, that the testimony of Yahusha, we all have to say, well, you just have to believe in Yahusha. Well, what did he believe in? If we're holding his testimony, it's important to know what he believed in. They're connected. He believed in keeping the Father's commands. Now, one of the things that comes up, and I actually wrote down these verses this morning when we were, as a family, my wife and I and our children were going through our Torah portion, and we've given up trying to figure out, who's on what Torah portion, like whether we're a week ahead or behind or whatever. But we were reading through Exodus 31 through 34ish today, and this is Yahuah on Mount Sinai, and he's speaking to the children of Israel. Now, this amazingly, what I'm about to read connects so well with verse 11 and 12. Here we go. And he's saying, "Speak thou also unto the children of Yashar'el, saying, Verily, my Sabbaths ye shall keep. For it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations." A sign meaning a mark, the mark of Yah. This comes straight from Torah. This is the mark of Yahuah, which we all want to have. "That ye may know that I am Yahuah, that doth sanctify you." Now, pay attention to this, and we're going to talk about this. What I'm about to read is the most politically incorrect statement that not even people within Torah will admit to. And it says what it says. "Ye shall keep the Sabbath, therefore, for it is holy unto you. Every one that defiles it shall surely be put to death. For whosoever doeth any work therein, that soul shall be cut off from among his people." Now, this is a pretty intense verse because I'm accused. People will come to me and say, weekly, no, this is works-based. You're saying that, salvation comes through works. However you want to phrase that, it says right here that if you don't do this work, you will be cut off from your people, from Israel. You can wrestle with this all you want. This is what it says. It says that 2 things. One is that Sabbath is the mark of Yah, and if you don't take that mark, then you will be, if you defile it, you will be put to death. This is what we just read. This is a sign of being cut off from the camp, is a sign of eternal death. Being cut off from eternity, from salvation, from the inheritance of eternity. You're taking the mark of you can only take one of the two, right? We all know this. You can either take the mark of the beast or the mark of Yah. Now, before I delve further into this, I want to read one other. So just rephrase here, guys. Yes, to a certain degree, you can say, "Oh, I don't have to do any works to be saved. I just have to believe." You could just, I'm just going to sit here. I'm going to believe. I'm believing. I'm believing. I'm believing. I'm believing. I'm believing. And then you could go through your life and you didn't do any works. And our master is going to show up and be like, "I gave you these talents. Why did you bury them? You wicked servant." I mean, this is straight from the parables, right? So in the same session today, we read this from Exodus 33:7, and this comes from the Targum. All right, this is the Aramaic Targum. This is so amazing. All right, "But the tabernacle he took away from thence and spread it without the camp." This is after the children of Israel decided that they didn't want to worship Yahuah as he asked to be worshipped. They decided that they would worship him by singing songs and playing a rock concert around a golden calf. And they thought that was a good idea. And of course, they were killed for their bad works. So the tabernacle gets moved outside the camp. And so Moshe removes it from the camp of the people to the distance of 2,000 cubits. And it was called, and it says this, and it was that when anyone turned by repentance with a true heart before Yahuah, he went forth to the tabernacle of the house of instruction that was without the camp to confess and pray for the pardon of his sins, and praying he was forgiven. Guys, that is such a powerful verse. And I want to point out, because we go through this, that people will come to me and say, well, no, like you're lost in your sins. If you think that we're supposed to obey this law, you're lost because there's no tabernacle. You can't have forgiveness for your sins. Well, what the church fails to teach obstinately is that there was never sacrifice for conscious sins. It's not there. You can look through. I challenge people, show me in Leviticus or the Levitical laws where there is sacrifice for conscious sin. Because if you consciously go out and sin, there's no sacrifice. Which is to say that the age of grace is a myth. It was always about grace. From the very beginning, there was grace. It says so right here. He says, look, all I want for you is to repent from your sins, to turn from your sins with a full heart. You confess those and pray to me about it. I will pardon you of those sins, and praying you will be forgiven. This is a promise by the Most High, and I love it. All right. So with that little distraction there, let's go back to what it talks about here, the mark of the beast. And the smoke of their punishment will go up from everlasting into everlasting, and they will not have rest day or night. But those who are punished now, those who are destroyed, they are wiped out. They are destroyed from eternity. Those who took the sign, the mark of the beast, and prayed to the carved image. These are bad works, right? So we can argue whether good works save us or not, but for certain, bad works condemn us. All right. So the lesson here is don't take the mark of the beast. Take the mark of Yah. And then we read, here is the hope of the set apart ones. This is our hope. These are those who do the commandments of Yahuah, right? We keep it. We keep his set apart days, his Sabbaths, his feast. We have his mark. And believe in Yeshua. And of course, to believe in Yeshua is to believe in the commandments of the Father. And then it says, and I heard a voice from the heavens saying to me, write, blessed are they who die on accounts of the sanctification of Yahuah from now on. And what the Ruach says is true. This is what I love. It says that they may rest from their works, for their works follow after them. And so it's saying that all those, because they kept the Father's commands, and then they were persecuted for keeping the commands. And of course, the testimony of Yahusha, that from this point on, they can rest now from their work, because their works, all those things they did for Yahuah in life, will follow them into eternity. It is, what's the word I'm looking for? Inheritance, right? You see the inheritance here, the inheritance of those who do bad works. They receive everything in this life. They've cashed it in for a slice of the pie with Satan. They're going to be thrown in the lake of fire with Satan. Those who obey Yahuah here and are persecuted for it will be blessed in eternity. This is why this is such a pivotal verse for my entire ministry and what I stand for here. And that's all I think I have on this chapter. So back to you, Rob.
Great stuff. I love some of the details you dug out there, and I'm going to touch on some of them myself. And this chapter 14, we're going to go a little over this first hour, but 15 is going to be quick for me, and I think perhaps all of us. So I'm going to touch on a few things I know Michael had mentioned with the second part. I'm going to cover the three angels now here with chapter 14, 6 through 13. And I'll start with the first two. So on the first angel, he's talking about he saw an angel fly in the midst of the heavens, and he had a great scroll. So I know Michael's asking about what that word was referring to on the third angel, where it says, so I can find it now. Should be 6. Had good news. Yeah, the good news to make known. Looking at the Hebrew there further, it is he had a great scroll to announce to those who dwell on the earth and to all the peoples and nations. So he has this great scroll. We read about the small scroll in prior chapters, and now here's a great scroll that is to be announced to all the peoples. And he said with a great voice, and here's instructions. So we're being the world is given instructions, and it says, fear Yahuah and do your prayer to him. So this first angel message from the great scroll is fear Yah and do prayer to him. So here's the positive. For the judgment day has come, and do prayer to him who created the heavens and the earth and the sea and the wells. Okay? So there's the first is the warning that's being sent out. Then the second angel cries out, fallen, fallen has Babel the great city, for she silenced all the nations with the wine of her harlotry. And that was digging into the Hebrew. So if we read the Greek and the Hebrew written here, we have, where is it at? Babel. Okay. And after this, a voice, another message cried out, fallen, fallen has Babel, the great city, for she corrupted all the peoples. Well, looking into it further, it was, for she silenced all the nations with the wine of her harlotry. So looking into that Hebrew further, she silenced all the nations with the wine of her harlotry. And I picture the image of silence, meaning suppression of free speech, what information they're being given and told and shared, limiting what they can share. I mean, we're seeing all this right now. So whether all of this is played out once before, it's definitely playing out again when reviewing this. Now she silenced all the nations with the wine of her adultery. So what was silencing all the nations? The wine of her harlotry. So I'm going to go into the harlotry piece with 2 more slides to better understand what does that mean, this harlotry. And I will share some verses on this for y'all to follow along. So the wine and the harlotry, we're going to see this discussion about the divorce of Israel. And I'm going to read from Hosea 4:10 through 12. And they shall eat, but in no way should be filled up. They committed harlotry, and in no way should they be straightened, because they abandoned to watch for the Yahuah. Harlotry and wine and new wine took the heart of my people. Okay, so it's telling us once again the heart of his people. Harlotry and wine and new wine took their hearts. They asked counsel at their trees, and their staff declares unto them, for the Ruach, which is the Ruach of harlotry, has caused them to wander, and they have gone a whoring, which is unfaithfulness, from under their Elohim. So it's given the definition of this. You know, the spirit of harlotry causes them to wander away from the obedience of Elohim. So we have to think about the harlot, as we've read in scriptures, and I'm going to read some more, that is the one that takes your eyes and takes you away from Elohim, from Yahuah. from obedience, from following, from keeping his commands, from serving him. Because we've read in John, Yeshua says, if you love me, you will keep my commands. And we just see this message over and over and over. All right, so I'll follow up with further is, give me your heart, my son, and your eyes. This is, Proverbs 23:26-33. Give me your heart, my son, and your eyes delight in my ways. So he starts off the positive. Give me your heart, let your eyes delight in my ways. And now he's going into the what not to do. For a prostitute is a deep pit, and a strange woman is a narrow well. Certainly she lurks as a robber, and increases the treacherous among mankind. This prostitute and the strange woman. Okay, back to this harlotry, taking you away from obeying the Father. 29. Who has woe? Who has sorrow? Who has contentions? Who has complaining? Who has wounds without cause? Who has red eyes? Those who linger long over wine. Those who go to taste mixed wine. Do not look at wine when it is red, when it sparkles in a cup, when it goes down smoothly. Why is he warning you about wine? Because in the end, it bites like a snake and stings like a viper. Now, you can take that prophetically. You can take that literally. Your eyes will see strange things, and your mind will say perverse things. This is part of the harlotry. This is part of the wine that is being discussed here, the imagery in Revelation, that this wine being taken is causing people's eyes to see strange things, not the truth, not what really is going on. They will see and believe the lies, and their mind will say perverse things. Even science says there's, well, I'm not going to go into that. Following this political correctness thing, their mind's going to go elsewhere. So here's those warnings. And those warnings are being spoken about in Revelation, and here's a definition of those with the harlotry and the wine of the harlot. All right, I will, and then I'm going to now further go on to the harlotry and what that caused Israel. And if you do not know this, definitely read and understand about this here in Jeremiah 3:1-10. If a husband should send away his wife, and she should go forth from him, and becomes to another man, shall by returning she return to him yet again? Rhetorical question. Shall not by defiling that woman be defiled? Let me read that again. Shall not by defiling that woman be defiled? But you fornicated with many shepherds, and you have returned to me, says Yahuah. Lift your eyes unto the upright way, and see where you have not been defiled. You have sat upon the ways for them as a crowbar, having been made desolate, and defiled the land in your harlotries and in your evils. And you had many shepherds for your occasion for stumbling. The appearance of a harlot became to you. You cast shame to all. Was it not until now you called me even father and head of your virginity? Shall it abide into the eons? Or shall it be guarded for victory? Behold, you spoke and did these evils, and have prevailed? And Yahuah said to me in those days of Josiah the king, you saw what the house of Israel did to me. She went upon every high mountain and underneath every tree of the woods, and she committed harlotry there. They were worshiping other gods. They were doing these strange things. They were not being obedient. And I said after her committing harlotry, all these things, turn to me. And she turned not. Yah always gives a chance. And the covenant breaker Judah saw her breach the contract, and I beheld, for on account of all of which she was overtaken by them, the house of Israel committed adultery. And I sent her out and gave her a scroll certificate of divorce into her hands, that the covenant breaker Judah feared not, and went and committed harlotry even herself. And her harlotry was nothing to her, and she committed adultery with the wood and the stone. And in all these things, the covenant breaker Judah turned not to me and her whole heart, and turned not to me with her whole heart, but with a lie. So we see there was a lie involved, and all of Israel broke that covenant, committed adultery, followed other gods, did not remain obedient in serving and loving Yah. So this harlotry is a huge warning to all of us to remain in obedience. I know Noel was talking about that with the obedience side of it. That is what is key. We read that about the 144,000, how they are following Torah and they are walking in righteousness. So now I'm going to talk about the third angel. So I harped on that good enough. So let's talk about what the third angel says, because that's going to give even more definitions here. That's going to support what the second angel just said, and for us to better understand what's taken place. So the third angel said with a great voice, if one does his prayer to the idol and to the beast, and take the sign on his hand or on his forehead, this one will drink of the wine of the fury of Yahuah, which is in the cup of fury, and he will be punished with fire and brimstone in front of his holy angels and the Lamb. And the smoke from their punishment will go up from everlasting unto everlasting, and they will not have rest day or night. And that is those who took the sign and prayed to the idol. So it gives you two markers: those who took the sign and those who prayed to the idol. And whether you want to call it the beast or the idol, it's the idol of the beast, so it's the same thing. So those who took the sign and prayed to the idol is who will be punished. And that's the difference between those who take the sign of Yahuah. We follow the commands. We follow this. We do the Sabbath. We are obedient, etc. And so next part here, as Noel was reading, when it comes to verse 12, here is the hope from the holy ones. And here are those who obey the commandments of Yahuah and believe in Yeshua. So that is our hope. We know that if we are those who obey the commandments of Yahuah, and believe in Yeshua, we will and are the holy ones. We must remain in this in this continually. That's why it's called faithfulness. It's continuous action, and we do not get swayed or tempted by the harlotry or the wine in this world, for it is always around. Then lastly, and I heard a voice from the heavens saying to me, "Right, holy are they who die on account of the sanctification of Yahuah from now on." And what the Ruach says is true, that they rest from their deeds, for their deeds follow after them. And Mike was asking, the holy are they who die on account of their sanctification of Yahuah. I put an asterisk there. That sanctification, account of their sanctification, is those who by refusing to denounce their faith in Yah, they died. And I want to speak to this, that mainstream Christianity will totally talk about this left and right. I will die for my faith. We hear it all the time. I've said it. We all say it. We'll die for our faith. But we hear this in mainstream Christianity. They will die. They will not take the mark. They will go all the way, and they will die for God. But they totally skip the verse above it. directly above it. And it says, those who obey the commandments of Yahuah and believe in Yeshua. Those who obey the commandments of Yahuah and believe in Yeshua. So I just want to emphasize that because it's something that's been dear to my heart, and how it's just right there in black and white, and it's just skipped over by mainstream left and right. So, and then lastly, real quick, the last part of it, I'm not gonna read this, but I just wanted to point out one sentence, and it's the one at the bottom, when it talks about the blood to the horse's bridle. The Hebrew there in further detail says 1,600 graves of the field. So couldn't figure out what that meant, if that was like a location that John was talking about, or if it was just covering that many graves. I don't know, but that's what I got out of. Anyone else has anything more on that, then great. But I wanted to share that, and I hope that was helpful and helps you, the listener, on this part of Revelation, because it speaks greatly about obedience. I mean, this chapter is really talking about those who are following Yah. It's about obedience, which is greater than sacrifice. With that, I am over to Michael.
If I recall, I think we're heading towards 15, and then we'll roundtable it. Is that correct, Noel?
Yeah, go ahead and read. Yeah.
Okay. Real quick, before I do, what I said about the 144,000 doesn't mean I'm correct. That Joel 2 verse, I feel we have to say it every time, but I just wanted to humbly, continue to study it out yourselves. So
I agree. Yeah. Okay. What we share, everyone, dig into yourself. We're not here to say we're all right, but this is what we're just digging into.
Current understanding. All right. So Hebrew Revelation, Confidential Counsels, chapter 15. And I saw great signs and wonders in the heavens, for 7 messengers came, and they had the 7 last plagues, for by them the burning anger of Yahweh is completed. And I saw something like a sea of glass mixed with fire, and those who overcame the animal and his carved image stood next to the sea of glass, and they had the lyres of Yahweh, I cannot pronounce that, and they sang the song of Moshe and the song of the Lamb, and said, Great are the works of Yahweh, Eloha HaSabaoth. Righteousness and truth are your ways, O King of Kings. And who will not fear you and give praise to your name? For you alone are Kodesh. Truly, all the nations will come and bow down before you, for your judgments are revealed. And after this I saw that the ark of the covenant was open in the heavens. Then the 7 messengers who had the 7 plagues went out, clothed in white clothes, and a girdle of gold was on their loins. Then one of the 4 living creatures gave the 7 messengers 7 bowls of gold, full of the fury of Yahweh, who lives from the everlasting and unto everlasting. And the house of prayer was filled with smoke, and the glory of Yahweh filled the tabernacle. And no one was able to go into it until the 7 plagues of the 7 messengers were finished. Off to Noel for commentary.
I had to be given the first up on commentary on the shortest chapter probably in the Bible. As you can all tell, there's not a lot here, and this is really set up for, like I said, it's a segue, it's a setup for what we're going to see next week. And I don't really want to personally comment myself too much on what we're going to see next week. But just make a couple quick observations here before handing it back to Rob and Michael and then roundtable it. Is that we see the sea of glass here. And as you guys know, I like to always reference, extra biblical books. And this is interesting because here in Revelation, we see the sea of glass ending it. And in the book of First Adam and Eve, which takes us back to the very beginning, we see the sea of glass. If anyone attended my baptism, there's a few people here who were a part of the baptism last August. I talked a lot about this and about how the sea of glass that we're seeing is actually a baptismal spot, that when they pass over into eternity, when the set apart are resurrected and they're given their immortal bodies, they are baptized into the sea of glass. So it's kind of interesting to see them standing before it. And this is what we read. On the 3rd day, Elohim planted the garden in the east of the earth, on the border of the world eastward, beyond which, toward the sun rising, one finds nothing but water. that encompasses the whole world and reaches into the borders of heaven. And to the north of the garden there is a sea of wafer, clear and pure to the taste, like unto nothing else, so that through the clearness thereof one may look into the depths of the earth. So you can actually look down and see the depths of the earth. That's how clear it is. Let's see. Oh, and let's see.
No, what chapter and verse did you just read?
I'm in chapter 1 of first Adam and Eve.
Thank you.
And when a man washes himself in it, becomes clean of the cleanness thereof, and white of its whiteness, even if he were dark. And Elohim created the sea of his own good pleasure, for he knew what would come of the man he should make, so that after he had left the garden on account of his transgression, men should be born in the earth, from among whom righteous ones should die. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, okay. Let's see. I think this is it here. But when Elohim made Adam go out of the garden, he did not place him on the border of it northward, lest he should draw near to the sea of water. And he had Eve wash themselves in it, be cleansed from their sins, forget their transgressions they had committed, and he no longer reminded of it, and be no longer reminded of it in the thoughts of their punishment. So that's kind of interesting. And then we see a prophecy that when he finally resurrects them, that he will let them bathe in this water. The last observation I wanted to make is that we see an interesting introduction of the Ark of the Testimony, or Ark of the Covenant. Now, what I'm trying to figure out is if this is a separate ark that was in the earthly temple, like if there is an Ark of the Testimony in heaven, or if this is literally the missing Ark of the Covenant, because the last time we saw mention of it was in 2nd Baruch chapter 6, verses 6 through 10. I'm not going to read that. You can turn there, 2nd Baruch chapter 6. And it talks about how the command was given to the angels before the angels let the Babylonians come in to destroy the temple and burn it, that the angels actually took out the Ark of the Covenant and they hid it in the earth. And the command was given to the earth that it would be hidden until Ron Wyatt discovered it. No, actually, no, it would be hidden until the very end and that nobody would find it. So it's kind of interesting that maybe I don't know what Rob and Michael you think, or anybody else. Maybe that's just a talking point. Is this the actual ark, or is this just has it been taken to heaven at this point, or is this just a separate ark that is in the temple in heaven? Anyways, I think back to you, Rob.
All right. A couple of things I'll point out. I only have one slide on this, but a couple things I want to point out is the sea of glass. I like that you mentioned that, the sea of glass mixed with fire, because we talked about being baptized in water and fire, and this is what that is when eternity with I believe this is part of that what's the word, ritual or procedure that will take place once the law's written on the hearts permanently. I think that will, at least in my opinion, will be part of what that is, being baptized in that water. And I also want to talk about here is those who overcame the beast and the idol. It looks like they are those who had lyres of Yahweh, and they sang the song of Moshe, the song of the Lamb. So I don't know if this song is the same as the 144,000, or if it's just specifically the song of Moshe. I know Michael mentioned the song of Moshe, but I wasn't sure if it was defined by the 144, if that is the same one or not. And then what's interesting here is that what we're starting to see is a description of what is being seen in chapter 15. I believe we've read already parts of what takes place after this and before this so far. And we see some descriptors like the 7 messengers came. Well, we read about the 7 messengers in Revelation 1, chapter verse 16, and I think it was 20, about the 7 stars, who they were. They were the messengers or angels. And we see that when this Ark of the Covenant was opened, that's when it seems that things start to take place and move forward. So I didn't have anything specific I want to talk about, but what I'll drop in is some keys that I've been keeping and saving as we're going through Revelation, and perhaps you can use this as a key in the next few chapters we're going to read. So when we read about these seven messengers, or we read about the elders, or the menorah, or the ruach, the fire pans, the crystal glass, and the living creatures and elders, just keep note of these things. So with that, I will pass it over to Michael and see what he has to share.
Alrighty, I don't have much either. Just some cross references and a cool thing on number one. So read the Hebrew, and I saw great signs and wonders in the heavens, for seven messengers came, and they had the seven last plagues, for by them the burning anger of Yahweh is completed. Leviticus 26:21 talks about the plagues. And that, yet if you show hostility towards me and are willing to obey me, I will increase the plague on you 7 times according to your sin. What is sin? Okay, so we know what it is in the Old Testament. I would say it's literal, right? Literal plagues. I want to talk about the actual word in the New Testament. So Strong's 4127, plague, P-L-E-G-E. The definition is a blow, a wound, a blow, a stripe, a wound, an affliction, plague. Okay, so besides Revelation, it's used twice as plagues in the New Testament. So again, maybe not the root word might be used more, but the way it's used in this verse is only used twice. Luke and Acts. So Luke 10:30. Yeshua replied and said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and he encountered robbers, and they stripped him and beat him and went away, leaving him half dead. It's just a robbery, huh? Stripped him and beaten him. Acts 16:23. When they struck them with many blows, that's the same word, they threw them into prison, commanding the jailer to guard them securely. So our resident Greek scholar Andy's in the chat. Maybe when we open it up, he can talk more about it, but it appears it's a physical blow. It's a physical beatdown, is what the same word it's describing in Revelation 1. Would that change some theology out there? Would you get corona out of your mind? Would you get leprosy out of your mind? Is it a physical beatdown? It's what it appears to me. That's what it says in the Greek. I'll let Andy and then also Rona talk about the Hebrew. Number 2, read the Hebrew, and I saw something like a sea of glass mixed with fire, and those who overcame the animal and his carved image stood next to the sea of glass, and they had leaders of Yahweh. So the sea of glass, I want to talk about that. It's the representation of worship, as the temple had the bronze sea, referring to the basin in the heavenly temple, which was to be used for Israelite priests to wash their hands and feet when they entered the sanctuary. So kind of like a baptism. So that's the sea of glass, as far as what the priest did. I don't know what to make of that, but I just wanted to point that out. Number 4, I'm going to read both. Who shall not fear thee, O Lord, and glorify thy name? For thou only art holy, for all nations shall come and worship before thee. And in the Hebrew, and who will not fear you and give praise to your name? For you alone are Kadosh. Truly all the nations will come down and bow down before you. The cross-reference is Psalms 86:9. All nations whom you have made will come and worship before you, Lord, and they will glorify your name. And then finally, number 8, I read the Hebrew, and the house of prayer was filled with smoke, and the glory of Yahweh filled the tabernacle. And no one was able to go in it until the 7 plagues of the 7 messengers were finished. Just more cross-references. So like I've been saying, pretty much every Revelation, Daniel and Exodus. So some in Exodus right here. So Exodus 19:18. Now Mount Sinai was wrapped in smoke, because the Lord had descended upon it in fire. The smoke went up like the smoke of a kiln, while the whole mountain shook violently. And then Exodus 40:34 and 35. Then the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Moses was not able to enter the tent of meeting because the cloud settled upon it, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And then finally, 1 Kings 8, 10, and 11. And when the priest came out of the holy place, a cloud filled the house of the Lord. So the priest that could not stand to minister before because of the cloud, for the glory of the Lord filled the house of the Lord. I don't know the exact verse, but I remember in Sirach, wisdom is a pillar of cloud too. So that's interesting. Wonder if that's, if she's the one in there, maybe. I don't know. That's all I got for chapter 8. I'll hand it off to Noel.
I'm ready to roundtable it. Rob, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, and I think Michael meant chapter 15, or you meant verse 8, one of the two. No, I'm ready to roundtable and open it up. And from what everyone has heard on chapter 14 and 15, if you have comments or anything to add or questions regarding what was read, please add. And I see Ronit's already ready.
Yeah, Rhoda, why don't you go ahead? What are your observations since you are reading directly from the Hebrew here? And it's funny, before you speak, it's funny because Rob, Michael, and I, we obviously don't read Hebrew. We read English, and we are making comparisons between the English Targum from the Greek to the English Targum in the Hebrew. So it's like we're still making comparisons between the Targums, but it's great that you get to read directly from the Hebrews. So take it away.
Yeah, so what I'm seeing many times is that the translators of the Hebrew manuscripts, whenever they don't have clarity, like the verse is confusing or the words are not making them happy, they just revert to the traditional translation. And that's what happened a couple of weeks ago when, I dropped the bombshell. So right now, they just, I'm going to start with chapter 15, since I only have one comment on that chapter. And it's a prime example of what I just said about the translators. So the word that he's using is actually not saying glass. In verse 2, when he refers to the ocean, he is actually using the word bowl, B-O-W-L, bowl. And he's using, this is a very rare word. I think it appeared only once in the Old Testament. And I'm just putting the verse here. And you see how it says, bring me a new bowl. That word is tzlochit. And that's the word that he's using in Hebrew here. So, like, whatever ocean is seeing is seeing it like in a form of a bowl. That's interesting. I don't know if he's just seeing like a bowl, like what Michael just mentioned, or like he's seeing like a great ocean. And, from his perspective, he can see that there is like, maybe the earth is not exactly flat. Maybe it's a little bit like a ball. I don't know. But that's the word that he used.
Well, I want to add that we see that these bowls, and I think Michael alluded to that and talked about that, as the priests having these bowls of water to wash themselves in, and it's probably a picture of what is above and being described here.
Well, to be fair, the surface of water is still flat.
Yeah,
of course, yeah. But maybe it is the same ball that Michael was alluding to.
And when you talk about a bowl, I mean, whether a bowl is perfectly rounded and concave, or if it's just carved out to where the water is filled into it, referencing it as a bowl. Either way, it would suffice to me.
Yeah. So just a little thing, and I just want to say he's not saying glass, he's saying bowl. Okay, so going back to chapter 14, so the first comment is that whenever you see first fruits, actually in Hebrew it's firstborn. And I don't know if in English when you hear first fruit it means firstborn, I don't know, but in Hebrew those are two different terminologies in the Bible. So he's literally talking about Bechor or Bechorot, which is the firstborn of humans and of animals. Okay, so let's talk about the 144,000. So both Rob and Noel reached out to me and asked me about verse 14 and what I thought about the virgins thing. And when I replied whatever I saw, and it took me a few hours to think, because there was something about it that made me feel uncomfortable about that verse. And what made me feel uncomfortable, let me go back to it. Sorry, it's not 14. Why am I saying 14? Verse 4. Okay, it's chapter 14, verse 4. So when he said that they haven't seen in women, then one word is kind of like erased in the manuscript, and the translator added whatever made sense to them, but in the manuscript it's missing, and then it says like virgins. What bothered me is the fact that he's alluding that if a man has a relationship with a woman, then it's a sin. I mean, it didn't. I just didn't feel comfortable about it because when you look in the Old Testament, most of the relationships are blessed relationships, and we are supposed to have a fruitful relationship, and it's not considered a sin. So that really bothered me. So then I went digging and hunting for verses, and the picture that I got is very similar to what Michael understood of those verses. So let me share a few quotes and read them to you with you. So the first one is from Numbers 3. And Yah spoke to Moshe, saying, "Now look, I myself have taken the Levites from among the children of Israel instead of every firstborn who opens the womb among the children of Israel, and the Levites shall be mine." Okay, so here Yah is declaring the Levites are mine. Which is, it goes very well with the verses of Revelation where John says that they belong, they were purchased, bought, ransomed by Yah. And then the next verse from Deuteronomy 10. Deuteronomy 10, verse 8, "At that time the Lord set apart the tribe of Levi to carry the ark of the covenant of the Lord, to stand before the Lord, to serve him, and to pronounce blessings in his name, as they do this day. That is why Levi has no portion or inheritance among his brothers. The Lord is his inheritance as..." Oops. Okay. I was in the middle of reading it. Okay. Okay, I lost it now. Let me go back to my document then. Okay, so the Lord, that is why Levi has no portion or inheritance among his brothers. The Lord is his inheritance, as the Lord your God promised him. So again, we see here that the Levite have special status. They belong to God. They are God's inheritance, and in return, God is their inheritance. And then the next quote that I wanted to share, dropping it here, that's from Ezekiel 44, and I'm starting with verse 15. But the priests, the Levites, the sons of Zadok, who kept charge of my sanctuary when the children of Israel went astray from me, they shall come near me to minister to me, and they shall stand before me to offer to me the fat and the blood, says the Lord God. They shall enter my sanctuary, and they shall come near my table to minister to me, and they shall keep my charge. And it shall be whenever they enter the gates of the inner court, that they shall put on linen garments. No wool shall come upon them while they minister within the gates of the inner court or within the house. They shall neither shave their heads, nor let their hair grow long, but they shall keep their hair well trimmed. No priest shall drink wine when he enters the inner court. They shall not take as wife a widow or a divorced woman, but take virgin of the descendants of the house of Israel or widows of priests. So this verse is important because here we are kind of like tying the virgins, and so basically it is a sin for Levites to marry a woman that was already married before, unless that woman is a widow of another priest. But that kind of put that, I think it clarifies a little bit more why he's talking about sinning with women. In my opinion, he's just kind of like talking about this special class of priests that are following exactly what they were supposed to do, not defiling themselves, but sticking to what Yah told them to do. And they shall teach my people the difference between the holy and the unholy, and cause them to discern between the unclean and the clean. In controversy, they shall stand as judges and judge it according to my judgments. They shall keep my laws and my statutes, my appointed meetings, and they shall hallow my Shabbat. It shall be in regard to their inheritance that I am their inheritance. You shall give them no possession in Israel, for I am their possession. For me, all of these verses connect very well with what John was saying, and I feel that this is the class of people that he's talking about when he's referring to the 144,000.
Yeah, that was a great point, because you zeroed in on the Levites, and then here specifically the sons of Zadok, and it giving the parameters around what is expected of them. And it would not be a far-fetched to say that the sons of Zadok, those who were priests and were obedient to his words, the ones who did not get married and were celibate and followed Yah with all their hearts, could very well be the 144,000 from their descendants.
Yeah,
So
but they didn't have to be celibates. They could, as long as they married virgins, they were fine. Okay, they were just not supposed.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
See what I'm saying? So
yeah, I can see that angle too. Yeah, because
yeah.
they fall within the guidelines that Yah has given them. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Renita, are we under the impression or under the thinking that this already happened? That the 144,000 thousand, or speaking past tense now?
I don't know if it happened or not. What I'm saying is that this is what I'm hearing, that those people are this type of, they come from the line of Zadok. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, and my opinion on to answer that, Mike, would be yes, it is likely because A, there's no priests of Zadok or anyone following to the letter and instructions that are given at this point that I'm aware of in this world, but in the prior times there were. That's my opinion.
Yeah, we definitely don't know. I can tell you right now that if any Jewish person will tell you that we know who among us is a descendant of that priest line, they are lying. We really don't know. We have no idea. So I want to, sorry.
When you're Rodi, when you say that they're from that priest line, are you talking about what priest line are you talking about specifically? The Levi or
Zadok.
Zadok? Okay.
Yeah, Zadok. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I'm looking at the prophecy of Ezekiel, and it's very clear that with the Levites definitely are the inheritance of God, of Yah. They belong to Yah. They are like his firstborns, so to say. And among them, because some of them sinned greatly, okay, during the two kingdoms, there were quite a few Levites that catered to the idol worshipping and like literally helped people worship idols and minister to them. So that's why in this prophecy, it's very clear. The only among all of the Levites, the only family that stayed faithful to me no matter what is the family of Tzadok.
Well, that was a lot for me to process. Yeah, I'd never heard that angle before. That's really good stuff. Was there anything else, Ronnie, that you wanted to add?
Yes, I want to talk about the mark. Famous mark. Okay, so what I did is I went hunting for that word that basically is talking about mark, and then I found some interesting things. It's so amazing about the Bible. It doesn't matter how many times you read it, you always discover new things. So let me start with Deuteronomy. Chapter 4. Just copy it here. So Yah is warning the Israelites, and he's saying, take careful heed to yourselves, for you saw no image when the Lord spoke to you at Mount Horeb out of the midst of the fire, lest you act corruptly and make for yourself a statue. So in Hebrew it says statue, but it means idol or carved image. In the image of any mark, is using the word mark. And then the next one, I'll get to my point. I'll just share the quotes first. The next one is from Chronicles 33, and it's talking about King Menashe, who really did a lot of evil things. Okay, so Menashe was 12 years old when he became king, and he reigned 55 years in Jerusalem. So he basically brought a lot of idol worshipping, and in verse 7 it says, he even set a statue, I'm sorry, not status, a statue of the mark. That's what it says, like a statue or idol of the mark. the idol which he had made in the house of God, of which God had said to David and to Solomon his son, in this house and in Jerusalem, which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel, I will put my name forever. So he put an idol of the mark. Therefore the Lord brought upon them the captains of the army of the king of Assyria, who took Manasseh with hooks, bound him with bronze fetters, and carried him off to Babylon. Now when he was in affliction, he implored the Lord his God, and humbled himself greatly before the God of his fathers, and prayed to him, and he received his entreaty application and brought him back to Jerusalem. This goes with what Noel just shared with us, that even if we sin the greatest sins, if we repent, Yah will forgive us, and we don't need a sacrifice, an actual animal sacrifice for it. And brought him back to Jerusalem into his kingdom. Then Manasseh knew that the Lord was God. After this, he built a wall outside the city of David on the west side of Gihon in the valley, as far as the entrance of the fish gate, and it enclosed Ophel, and he raised it to a very great height. Then he put military captains in all the fortified city. He took away, where is it? He also, did I leave all of this? He also repaired the altar of the Lord, sacrificed peace offerings and thank offering on it, and commanded Judah to serve the Lord God of Israel. So, I'm sorry, I missed it. It's in verse 14, he said, and then he put military, verse 15, he took away the foreign gods and the mark from the house of the Lord, and all the altars that he had built in the mount of the house of the Lord and in Jerusalem, and he cast them out of the city. So again, this word is used in connection with idol worshipping. There was something to do with a mark, an idol with a mark. Then in Ezekiel chapter 8, he says, he stretched out the form of a hand and took me by a lock of my hair, and the Spirit lifted me up between earth and heaven, and brought me in visions of God to Jerusalem, to the door of the north gate of the inner court, where the seat of the mark of jealousy was, which provokes to jealousy. Then he said to me, Son of man, lift your eyes now toward the north. So I lifted my eyes toward the north, and there, north of the altar gate, was this mark of jealousy in the entrance. So I think when John was using that word mark, I can't help by thinking that it's somehow related to all of the verses that I just mentioned. I didn't. Did I drop the Ezekiel? Yes. Yeah, so I can't help by thinking that there is a connection between the mark of that John is referring to and the mark that was placed in the temple and was used in idol worshipping throughout the kingdom. I'm not sure what mark it is, but Ezekiel calls it mark of jealousy. So just wanted to share those thoughts. Love to hear your thoughts on what I just said about the mark.
Could you, Roni, because there was a lot of information there, do you think you could maybe sum it up what you think specifically the mark is based on what you read?
So I feel like there is a specific mark that you put on an idol. Like there is an idol with a specific mark that was used through idol worshipping in at least in the kingdom of Israel, but also in the kingdom of Judea, because Ezekiel saw it. Okay, so there was a mark that represented a certain idol worshipping, and I don't know what it is, but in Ezekiel it was called mark of jealousy, and Yah was very upset about it. And then with Menashe, he put, when he spread idol worshipping, that was part of what he did. So when he repented, he made sure he removes it. But they are not explaining exactly what it is. They just keep referring to it in a very abstract way. They just say the mark. Okay, so that's why I feel like, John is coming from all of this heritage, and he must have known what mark it was. And I feel that maybe this has to do with the mark that he is mentioning.
Okay, so you think just to get clarity on this, do you think that there was a mark in the temple in Jerusalem specifically, like there was maybe something to do with that, or no?
So in the inner court, yeah, as Ezekiel, he brought Ezekiel to Jerusalem through the north gate, and in the inner court, he saw the seat of the mark of jealousy.
Right.
So
I'm just trying to envision that. So okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I as you're speaking about that, I'm thinking, this mark, could it be around in historical places, in images or in documents or on old buildings, temples, etc. And then when I was thinking even about the Star of Raphaim, you have the two triangles, one pointing up, one pointing down, as above, so below. You have the pentagram, and then you have all kinds of other symbols and marks out there, that it, I guess, could possibly be. So, yeah, if anyone has anything to add on thoughts on that, please share.
When I read those verses, I kept thinking that maybe this is what Yeshua referred to when he said abomination of desolation. Like there was something that all of them knew. There was a certain thing that was used in those days, and I think that's there is a mark in it, and I don't know. I feel like, and for me it's the first time. I mean, how many times I read those books, and all of a sudden it jumped at me. Wow, there is a mark, and so it also connected to me with abomination of desolation. So
Right.
That is interesting, and the only thing I would maybe come back at with that is that I wonder if there would, in this case, if this is the case, if there are maybe perhaps two marks being spoken about, because the mark of the beast seems to be the beast, or the mark of the animal seems to be referring to the government entity of Rome. No, I mean,
I'm just wondering if that mark that was required of people to put on their hand and or their forehead is the same mark that idol had on it, because that's
sure.
very specific for it's very specific for out of all of the idols. There were so many idols that they worshipped, that out of all of those idols, that there is something to do with a mark that really required taking Ezekiel, in a vision into the temple to see that mark.
Huh. And that's something we may never know then.
Yes.
I mean, assuming that this happens and there was a abomination that caused desolation in the whereabouts of 66 to 70 AD. I did mention last week that it is interesting that I'd misquoted saying it was Vespasian or Titus, but a Roman general did come up to Jerusalem and he surrounded it. I think the year was 66 AD. It was during the war, and he miraculously, like, it looked like that was it. Like, the Romans surrounded it, and then he just, for an unexplained reason, just kind of got up one morning and he left. And then when Titus and Vespasian then came back and surrounded, that was it. And I do want to just quote here while we're on this, that this is taking us back to Revelation 12 for a moment. But when it talks about the woman that is fleeing into the wilderness, and Hasatan tried to create the flood, the army, the nations, that kind of stuff. Well, I found this because I've been digging into this week. And so I'm only bringing this up now because if there was an abomination that caused desolation in the temple, which I think we're looking at some time then when the Romans surrounded it and then left, which then would have given those within Jerusalem, the church, the Nazarene, reason to leave. They would have remembered Yahushua's words. Don't even go back for your jacket. Just run, get out of there. And this is what Eusebius says. And it's interesting enough, he doesn't call them Christians here. He calls them Nazarenes. Really interesting. The people of the church of Jerusalem were commanded by an oracle, the oracle being Yahushua, given by a revelation before the war of the Jews, to those in the city, Jerusalem, who were worthy of it, to depart and dwell in one of the cities of Perea. Perea is, which they called Pella. Pella is a city in Jordan, which happens to be right over there by Petra. To it, those who believed on Messiah traveled from Jerusalem, so that when holy men had altogether deserted the royal capital of the Jews and the whole land of Judea. So he's saying that all the holy men fled from the city, and they went across the Jordan to Jordan, to the modern country of Jordan. Let's see, and then he says, let's see, for after all those who believed in Messiah had generally come to live in Perea, in a city called Pilla, and so on. So he has quite a few quotes here, but it's really interesting, and he talks about specifically the Nazarene. So I don't know. It seems like probably something did happen there. Maybe they all recognized it, and maybe they did. Maybe they showed their cards, the temple controllers, and they're like, "All right, this is what we're doing. This is who we're worshiping now." That could have very well been the case.
Can I add something, Noel?
Please do.
I was just looking at the Greek version of chapter of the verse 2 that Ronit was commenting, and I didn't see there any mark on the Greek version, strangely enough, because I know that the LXX goes hand in hand with the KJV, but strangely enough, I didn't see any mention of the mark. What it does mention is, it says, I'm just going to do some kind of live translation. So can you go to Thirio, get to go, not have to. And it says, so, and whoever beats the animal and the image of the animal thereof, and and of the name, and the number of the name after of the beast. But there's no mention of the carved image, which, strangely enough, the KJV mentions about Mark, but not the Greek version. which is actually the archaic Greek, not the modern Greek. And I'm not reading from the modern Greek, because the modern Greek it's got things a lot more twisted and very differently. So I'm just going straight from the archaic Greek. And it says no mention of the mark, which I think goes more in hand with chapter 15, verse 2, which says, and those who overcame the animal and his carved image stood next to the sea of glass. This is actually goes more hand in hand. It's to the so the Greek goes hand in hand with the Hebrew this time, but not the KJV. Yeah, just wanted to mention, and maybe the reason for this is because maybe the mark was something which, as Ronit said, which they knew at the time what it meant, but not but they knew what it meant, but not maybe we don't know anymore. The idea is, I think that from my understanding, is that they actually worshipped the beast. Sometimes, and I know that in our days we have a lot of symbolism, and we have symbolism everywhere, and I think they kind of, they're trying to make the people, even unintentionally, kind of go along with this symbolism. But yeah, I don't know. That's what I observed.
Thank you, Andy. We appreciate that, especially when we can get some live translations on these meanings and these words. So thank you.
Yeah, sure. And also wanted to mention, sorry, I forgot to mention this. Ronit, you said on the chapter, on the Chronicles 33, I went to the equivalent chapter 33 on the Greek version. And again, on Chronicles 33, verse 7, it says, you mentioned there, he even set a status, card image of the mark. Well, again, the word mark, it's missing on the Chronicles 33 on the Greek version. So yeah, just wanted to mention that as well.
I'm sorry. I put it's whenever I take a verse, I usually, if I feel that the translation is not correct, I will correct it. So in this case, I think it said image, and I was going to write statue, and by mistake I put status, but it's statue. In Hebrew it's statue, but that word pesel, you can also refer to it as a carved image, since it is what it is. Pesel is carved image. And you can also say idol, because idol and statue is the same word in the Old Testament.
I think he was talking about mark, the word for mark.
The mark also, because it said image or something like this, so I changed it to mark because that's what it says in Hebrew.
I see. No, I was just, Rob is right. I was just referring to the mark. And I was just, while reading all of these things, my insight is that maybe Yah means that a mark can be any carved image that some people, they follow or worship. And we have like symbolism everywhere nowadays. And maybe that is what, they want us to make us intentionally or unintentionally kind of worship different images and different marks.
Yeah, that definitely a mark is a symbol for sure, but there is a certain symbol that is I'm seeing it like through the verses, that there is a specific symbol that is specifically upsetting Yah. Okay. That's what I'm seeing. Like there is a specific symbol, and he even gave it a name in Ezekiel, and he calls it symbol of jealousy.
I see. Okay.
No, image is not a mark. I mean, okay. So let's organize all the terminology, okay? Because I'm seeing some questions from Lisa. So there are a few words in the Old Testament. The first one is pesel. Pesel is statue, or you can also say carved image, or you can say idol. Okay. Then there is tmuna. Tmuna is literally a picture nowadays, but in those days you would say image, right? They didn't have a camera, so you would say image for tmuna. And then there is siman and semel. Those are marks or mark or a symbol, okay? So carved image is not mark. Mark is a different word. It's even a different root.
I just want to say this. I've been sitting on the edge of my seat trying to get this out, but my mic cut out earlier. Right whenever you said that it was an idol, Ronit, I just shared this in general chat with Sparrow777, and it made me think of the cube, the black cube, which represents Saturn, the Saturnalia Brotherhood, and that Muslims, they wear the black cube on their forehead, like you were saying. There's a lot of connections there, and that also stems into other idols and symbolism as well, like the rings. People wear rings, the the Teflons, and then and crowns, of course. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up. I did share something here in general voice chat, but it's also in general chat. If anybody's interested, there's a link there. It just tells you a little bit about it. But really, it stems to the worship of Saturn, and it goes right along with what you're saying of jealousy.
And the jealousy goes well when when a husband, we have a relationship between Yah and his chosen nation at the time as a husband and wife, and the wife basically committed adultery. So of course there is jealousy involved, and Yah refers to himself as a jealous God. So that symbol completely awakened the ultimate jealousy in Yah. And so I don't know what that symbol is, whether it's the black cube or the all-seeing eye or the pentagram. I have no idea, but there is a specific mark, and today was the first time that I realized it when I went through those verses.
So until we figure this out, I think it's a good idea to keep away from the all-seeing eye, the pentagram, the hexagram, the cube, and what else am I missing? Let's just keep away from all these symbols.
Yeah, just my take in this is that whenever I see any symbols, and if you get down to the symbology, and if you see some documentaries which they put up there, what I've come to understand is that every and all the symbols, they boil down to worshipping, I think, one or two deities, and that is actually either Baal or Satan himself. That's kind of what I've come to understand. If you kind of investigate and what every single, for example, the pyramid, which is every corner of the pyramid is a 6, which is the mark of the beast, which is basically the beast, and which is basically Satan. And if you go to the cube again, you will see that they kind of point, and if you analyze them, all of them they point to one thing. So yeah, but I think the main idea is that, and what I see in the Revelation and in the Greek and also the Hebrew, but not the KJV, is that it mentions about do not worshiping the image, which is carved image, and also the name of the animal. So maybe from all this symbolism and all the symbolism, it actually boils down to one specific symbol, which is the number 666. And that's what we kind of have to be aware of or be careful of whenever we see such symbols and unintentionally we kind of fall prey to worshiping them or associate ourselves with those images.
Well, good stuff, guys. Does anyone else have any other observations or thoughts on what we read on the 144,000? It seems like here that, and I think, Rob, were you suggesting earlier that the core of Babylon was the were you making the connections to the adulterous wife of Israel?
Yeah, the disobedience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I guess I'm a little slow. That was the first time that clicked. I was like, oh my goodness, I think that's exactly correct. And the wide influence that Yah's children, who went whoring after other Elohim, had on all the nations of the earth. And that terrible. He calls us to be a light on a hill, right? And yet they did the complete opposite, and that makes absolute sense.
Here's my thought is, if you look at the world today and all of the quote spirituality of what people are seeking and going after and following and worshiping, the majority of it is not him, and they're all whoring after other gods, whether they know it or not. And it's not our job to condemn them. It's our job to bring them to the light and share with them the truth in the fruit of the Spirit, in love, peace, joy, etc. And that is what we can do. And when they hear that from us, from the words of our testimony and our understanding, if they hear his voice, they will be intrigued. They will want to listen. They will want to know more and be drawn to this truth because it'll resonate with them. But to the point of what I'm speaking here with the harlotry, that is what's going on in this world, is the harlotry that's gone throughout and spread like wildfire out there. People are worshiping another Elohim, and they're very close. I mean, very close. And I'm not the one that can split the hairs on what that means and like how close are they? Are they worshiping the right one? I don't know. I can't discern who is and who isn't on the right path, because what I do know from scriptures is that I believe if their heart is earnest, like truly earnest, and they are have that faith, that core faith of Yah, and have a heart of obedience, and they're repenting, but they're under a leader that is leading them somewhere else. There's always a good chance that they're going to just be led astray unless they break out of that. And I pray that we can be one of those that can reach those people, because they're out there. Their hearts are really for Yah, but they just haven't heard what it's truly all about. And so, so that's more or less what I'm talking about when I see that, with the harlotry going on within the world. I hope that explains that.
Well, guys, I'm going to give it maybe another couple minutes for anyone to, toss in your thoughts here on these chapters and the things that were going on within. Does anyone else have anything, any questions for Ronit, Rob, Michael, myself, anybody else?
How does nobody have 144,000 comments? Come on, guys. Don't be shy.
Right?
I wrote my comment earlier, and just my current understanding of the way we're seeing how his return, was at the destruction of the temple. I just feel like when Revelation's talking about the angels, quote unquote, that went out with the gospel, I mean, those were the apostles, and so anyone who repented and returned to the covenant during that 40-year grace period between the resurrection and the temple destruction would have, and who endured all the persecution, did not backslide, did not waver. The definition that I looked up for virgin was marriageable daughter. So they stayed pure to the faith. They followed the Lamb wherever he went, even unto death. And so they kind of qualify then as the bride and the 144,000. That's just kind of how I view it right now. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I mean, I definitely see the 40 years are really interesting, right? I mean, I've said this before. We see the 40 years in the wilderness. The spies went into the land for 40 days. Only 2 of them brought back good reports. The other 10 of the 12 spies gave evil reports. The people believed the evil reports. They had to wander for those 40 days and another 40 years. We see it had to do with the giants in the land, interestingly enough. And then we see David doing the same thing, where Goliath is challenging Israel for 40 days. Nobody wants to fight him. David fights him, and because of that, he gets 40 years as king. And here we see once again, it's almost like the 40 years in the wilderness, where they're giving the children of Israel and Yahudah are given a test. The sheep are coming back in, who Yahusha who he came for, and at the end of the 40, we see judgment coming down on his people, those who rebelled. And yeah, the picture seems just so clear to me on those fronts. And the book of Revelation as a whole I said this before, and for those who are telling me, no, Revelation takes place in the future, and I'm like, well, what evidence do you have that it takes place in the future? And they'll be like, well, it hasn't happened yet, and it's like, well, that's your evidence that it hasn't, And when we look at this as happening, judgment coming down to Jerusalem in 70 AD, I mean, this picture that's being formed it's so unbelievable. It's epic, and it brings the fear of Yah to me in a lot of ways. Like, oh wow, like there was a lot of people here who did not love Yah, and they were done. They were tossed into Gehenna. So there was Gehenna is behind the temple over there, and I really think that there were people who were literally their bodies were disposed of and tossed in Gehenna. So
I have a question, Noel.
Yeah, go ahead.
This might be a little bit not a question, it's observation, a question. So I've come to understand that from the moment of the resurrection of Christ on the third day until the 70 AD, some time passed during that time. Let's assume, just for the conversation, it's 30 years. I don't know the years, but let's just assume 30. And during those 30 years, the people who actually turned to Christ's teachings, were they actually still sacrificing? I know that Christ grew up in a Torah community, and obviously he followed Yah's commandments to the letter and everything. He was Yah's son. Now, after he died, did the teaching change in terms of the sacrificing of the animals? And if it changed, what did the people actually do? Did the people who followed, like Peter, even the 12 apostles, what did they teach? And the people who actually followed the 12 apostles and their teachings, which was actually the teaching of of Christ. And I'm not putting Paul in the conversation. I'm just saying, just for the, for apostles, like they knew and they lived with Christ and they knew what he was saying because they lived with him very closely. Did they actually follow him? Did they actually do? Because I see in many scriptures, even in the destruction of Jerusalem, which we read the other day, I see that the temple, so from the moment of Christ until the moment of resurrection of Christ, until the 70 AD, the temple, it is still high, which means the temple of Yah, which was used for sacrifices, until 70 AD was actually used. Yes, but if we don't need to do any more sacrifices, then why was the temple up high? Does that mean that Yah was actually even furious for the fact that the temple was up high and people were still sacrificing, even though there was no need?
Okay.
Or where there was actually a need to still sacrifice? I'm just curious about this. Yeah.
Yeah. So I believe that there was still a need to sacrifice, and that the sacrifices were not done away with. So we need to define what a sacrifice is, and also what they were sacrificing for. And as I pointed out, this is something I did not realize until I started really digging into Torah when I came over to Torah, because I had been lied to my entire life by the church that said that that modern Jews are they're outside of the plan of salvation on the basis that they don't have a temple if they uphold that system. That is in great error, because they'll say, well, there's no sacrifice for their sins. Well, it came to my attention as I was looking into this that there were never, ever sacrifices for conscious sins. Like if you go out and you consciously sin, there is no sacrifice for it. You could not bring anything to the temple that I have found, any kind of animal, grain, anything like that is going to cover that. So let's consider that right there. So after Yahusha, if they still sinned consciously, there was still no sacrifice for it, just as there was not before. And of course, this is, this brings in clarity to what Yahusha was doing. So let's look at what the sacrifices actually were for. There were sacrifices for unconscious sins, but I think, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong on this, I think 2/3 of the sacrifices in Leviticus are specifically Thanksgiving sacrifices or offerings. Okay, so this is one of the ways you could look at the temple. You want to go be in the presence of the Most High. You want to go experience the Most High. All right, so you're going to sacrifice one of your, and keep in mind too, the Levites have no inheritance, right? They don't have land, they don't have their own animals. They need to be fed. All right, so let's think about that as well. So I'm going to go kill one of my lambs, to the unblemished lamb that I have, meaning the best lamb that I have, to go take it to Yah. And this is a sacrifice for me, because now I'm not getting the wool from that. It could be an animal where I'm not getting the milk or any of that kind of stuff, right? I am actually losing. It's a sacrifice because I'm losing some of my personal things that I can gain more money on in the future. It's the same thing with the Passover lamb, right? That's a sacrifice. I'm losing something that I could get monetary gain on or pleasure further in life that is cut off. And I'm taking it to the temple, and it's almost like it's like I'm going to dine and have a meal in Yahuah's presence, which really excites me. It's the idea that I can go into his presence. And he's like saying, look, I just want you to come and dine with me, be with me, and and so on and so forth, right? You bring the groceries, you bring the recipe, the spices, all this kind of stuff. We'll cook it up on the flames. And then eventually you see in the part in like Isaiah where he's like, I am sick and tired of your, sacrifices, all this stuff. You're an unrepentant people. I'm so sick of it. I don't even want you coming in my presence anymore, right? But all that being said, that is my understanding of what these sacrifices are. And I think that they're grossly misrepresented by the church. And so we see that the disciples, we even see Paul, for example. Paul is actually a great testimony for this, because all throughout Acts and stuff, he kept Sabbath. He would talk about going to the Jerusalem for the feast. And so, yes, if they're going to Jerusalem for the feast, it means they're going to the temple as well, which means there's sacrifices, there's, harvest, sacrifice, all sorts of stuff. So, anyways, all that to say that it would not, in my opinion, had the temple was destroyed as a judgment from Yahuah, the Most High, but not because sacrifices were done away with. It was like in my opinion, like divorcing Judah. Like, I'm done with you guys. But that's, again, someone else can chime in and show my error on that or whatever. But yeah.
So if that's the case, does that mean that we still have to do sacrifices nowadays?
Well, that's a good question. Number one, we are not in the land. So if you're doing a sacrifice, it needs to be where Yahuah chose that sacrifice to be. So I'd have to pull up scripture on that. But what I've read, my understanding is that I am not to go out and do those sacrifices apart from where he has commissioned it to happen.
Well, let's not forget that the only temple now is the one he's building in us. We are the temple. He's placed his name on us. So now we bring sacrifices of praise, of thanksgiving. They're spiritual sacrifices. And also, let's not forget that when at the crucifixion, the curtain was torn, the veil was torn in the temple. When they did the next Yom Kippur, the thread did not turn back white. I mean, all these things were evidences that the temple was kind of over. And so I think as people were learning and coming to the truth of, Yahushua's gospel, and because just like he taught them at the Passover, he did the last Passover and closed out that old covenant, and then he presented the bread and wine. He says, now as you do this, this is how you do it now in memory of me. So there wasn't any more need for a blood sacrifice. And so I think so when Paul's talking about the laws that were done away with, those are the laws that he was referring to.
So I just want to clarify then, like Lisa, from your position that the Nazarene, but whatever you want to call them, the Christians, the followers of Messiah, that they would have been against going to the temple and doing sacrifices.
Well, I think that would have been part of why they were persecuted and why Paul was being, they persecuted Paul, saying he was against, he was against the temple. He was against the temple laws, because, I think during that 40 years as they were learning this process, that the temple was no more, that they were the temple, and that, he gave the ultimate sacrifice. Even the Passover, he said, now when you keep this, you do it with the bread and wine in memory of me. You don't need a lamb anymore. So, I mean, I don't know how long it kind of went on, but when they would go to the temple and see that, the veil is rent, the Yom Kippur thing was not received, they had to start getting the picture that the temple was obsolete now. I don't know.
I think this is the conclusion of that kind of. I think I'm coming to the same conclusions as Lisa with this, because Christ said to the students that not one stone will be left here. And I don't think he meant it in a sense that, you will be punished because this temple is what it is or what you've done. It's because maybe there is no need anymore for any temple. So there is no need for a sacrifice.
Well, there is a temple in heaven.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. How do you explain what we see in Revelation? Temple in heaven and even an altar. On chapter 14, verse 18, he's talking about an altar and an angel that is responsible for controlling and managing that altar. So how do you explain all of this?
Yeah, my view on it.
The way I explain it is, just very quickly, this one. The way I explain it is because in heaven we will have a circumcised heart, and we will sin no more, and we will have different ways of actually amending for the sins. So I think on this earth we have the sins, they have to be washed by blood, and that's why we do the sacrifices. Now in heaven, I don't know how it works exactly, but I know that we will have more circumcised hearts, and we will not sin on the same way that we have it here. Not sure if that's correct though.
Well, I just see the temple here physically was to be a reflection or a shadow picture of the temple in heaven, but I feel like the ultimate temple that he was moving toward is the one that Yahushua is building in us. When Peter says we are lively stones being put together for a temple. So I think any desire for people to think that we need a new physical temple anywhere is going to be a distraction. It's always been a distraction, and not looking at how we are supposed to be built up as a spiritual temple.
How do you guys feel about, like, okay, so if Yahushua is coming to the earth with the plan of, I'm going to end the Levitical system, where do we see, because we see that the Levitical priesthood is forever, like, where do we see him being, like, laying out those plans? Like, all right, guys, we're going to be done with these sacrifices. We're not going to be doing them anymore. The Levites, you can step down. You can go to your own homes now. Like, I feel like I need to see this spilled out a little bit better for me. To me, when I see the temple rents, I always grew up with Christianity that's him saying that we can go in his presence now. We don't need the temple anymore. Then I read books like the Gospel of Bartholomew and stuff, where it was a straight out of judgment on the Jews for murdering the son of El. Like, it was we see these judgments against the Yahudim, not against the temple itself. It was his Yahuwah's total disgust with what they were doing with his house. That's how I take it.
Exactly. Yeah, and also Yeshua said that not even the most little thing was going to be canceled, from the Torah. Like, the Torah stands, like, nothing is canceled by what he is saying and what he is doing. So he didn't say, except for we no longer need the Levites and we are not going to have the temple anymore.
Yeah, I want to weigh in on this if I can. My thought on it is that we know that the high priest, Caiaphas, I can't never remember his name, rent his clothes, and we know the high priest does not do that. And so that could have been the indicator that he was no longer high priest, where he stayed in that role. So the temple and the temple being rent, the curtain, etc., may have put some type of nullification on the need for sacrifice at that point, because it was in void, so to speak. I'm saying that's a possibility. And if it's not, then we obviously know that around 70 AD it was destroyed. So it was definitely done away with to do the sacrifices until until the kingdom comes. So I'm in the position that the sacrifices were in play and always are in play, but with the temple destroyed, and I think it's a both scenario, as Lisa said, that now we are the temple and we are to walk it out, and that's where the piece of the obedience comes to the sacrifice. Can we give praise and thanks to Yah and not have to actually do a grain sacrifice and bring it to a temple? Yeah, we can. Because there's no temple, like physical temple. We are that example of that temple, and so we do the actions to fulfill these quote sacrifices in Thanksgiving and so forth. So that's where I sit on it at this point. That helps.
So when between the first temple destruction and the erection of the second temple, there were no there was no temple, no sacrifices, none of that system. That didn't mean that it was cancelled. It was just paused,
Right.
but it wasn't cancelled.
Agreed.
I just wanted to add that, in the first book of Adam and Eve, the point of the sacrifice itself, where it actually started, because Adam was, I think, a priest before actually sinning, and he knew that for a sin, a blood had to be sacrificed, and that's why where he actually made the first sacrifice, and when he sacrificed it, then Yah came to him and said, the same way that you are making this offering for me, that's how I shall make the offering for you. So with Christ, actually, the sacrificing is actually done away with, because he saved all the people as he had promised to Adam, which was the first sacrifice. And I think the fact that Adam sacrificed the first sacrifice that he made on the altar, which he built for Yah, I think it was because of the knowledge that he might have had, the Levitical knowledge that he has, and which means that most probably what Ronit says, that the Levitical laws will never be made away with, but it's, for example, we will still have to wash our sins with blood if needed be, but the thing is that in heaven we will have a circumcised heart, and we will not need to do any blood sacrifices because we will not sin. But it doesn't mean that kind of tradition or law has to be done away with.
Well, and I also just want to point out one more time, and hopefully this point wasn't overlooked, that as I pointed out before, there were no sin sacrifices for conscious. There were no sacrifices for conscious sin. There were only sacrifices for unconscious sin, but that was not even the whole of it. It was almost entirely had nothing to do with sin. They were sacrifices in praise and worship of the Most High. And I don't want that to be overlooked, that he instituted a system where people would come and offer him the best of what they had in worship of him. So, and furthermore, my understanding of Hebrews is that the law was transferred from the Levites to the Melchizedeks out of necessity. And so I see the Melchizedeks up in heaven still, going about the sacrificial system. That there is a temple, there's an altar in heaven, and I can't tell you. I've never been there to heaven, so I can't tell you whether there are animals sacrificed there or not. I know that that's a extreme thought for any kind of Christian thinking, but I don't see a problem with it. I don't see a problem that there is literally sacrifices still being made by the Melchizedeks on our behalf. Keep in mind, I'm not talking about conscious sins. Okay, I'm talking about everything that is prescribed within the Levitical law. So, anyways, that's just my 2 cents on that. So,
Hey, I wanted to add something that I don't know if it made an impact on everybody, or I didn't explain it well enough, but I wanted to just talk about the oh God, where did it go? The wine, the piece about the wine, and I think we're there is a good there's a good understanding to learn from this, and it's in, I think, verse it's in Proverbs, when I was relating the wine of harlotry that they will be drinking in Proverbs 23, like 30 to 33, 29 to 33. when I read that, it was asking in a question, who has woe, who has sorrow, who has contentions, who has complaining, etc. It's those who linger over the wine, they want to go to taste the mixed wine. They looking at the wine when it's red, it sparkles and it goes down smoothly. So this is that view of the peoples of the world. They have these woes, they have these sorrows, they have contentions, there's complaining, they have wounds without cause, all the sickness and diseases, and they can't even figure out why and what. They got red eyes. It's because they linger long over, they look at and taste smooth mixed wine of harlotry. And I, went over that with the harlotry of, anything that leads you away from Yah. So all of these things that are happening are due to people longing and seeking out the harlotry of this wine. And then it clearly says, in the end, it bites like a snake and stings like a viper. Your eyes will see strange things, and your mind will say perverse things. So I just wanted to emphasize that again. I love the wine memes. It's awesome, and it's tying in the wine to the wine of harlotry of the spirit of harlotry that's going on, and I think it's a great mix for us to think about of how it is affecting this world. All these problems are due to people committing harlotry against Yah by disobedience, and not just blatant disobedience, but they're longing and lusting and seeking this harlotry out, and which is going to be to their demise. So I just wanted to add that. I was thinking about it again, and I don't know if I explained it well enough to really hit home.
Good stuff tonight, guys. That was good stuff. I enjoyed the discussion. With that, I'm going to officially close. And yes, Josh is still with us. He is still amongst the land of the living. And we're going to officially close tonight. Thank you, everyone, for coming to this Sabbath get together and going through this book of Revelation. And, I've been really wrestling with this stuff through here, and I know you guys have too. And I appreciate everyone's input. And so let's do this again next week. And of course, we will continue talking tonight, but this is the official end. Good night, everybody. And now we can begin the after party.
Shalom. Thanks, Noel. Appreciate it, everyone.
Shalom. Thank you.
Shalom.